to talk about how AI is transforming supply chain, transport, and logistics. Our next panel conversation is going to be, we have an industry leader, like we said, if you joined us, we're going to start with an industry leader who is from the CIO at Cette. Please welcome to the stage Dominique Malenfant. Come on up, Dominique. Joining Dominique, we have a panel, the Director of Information Technology at AEM. Bienvenue. A technology leader at AEM and is here with us. Christiane Labonville is joining us. Bienvenue, Christiane. The business development at Optel, Louis-Olivier Roy. Come on out, Louis. Also, Chief Health Data Officer at CHUM, Anne Nguyen. Come on out, Anne. We have the owner, contract research and development engineer, True North Intelligence Algorithms, Brian Hatter. Come on, Brian. The startup we're going to be hearing from today is Melly.ai. Huang Yo, CTO and Director of Technology, come on out. Welcome. Our researcher, Professor, Department of Computer Science and Operations Research at l'Université de Montréal, Emma Freijinger. Come on out, Emma. Hi, Emma. How are you? And our moderator, who's going to lead us through all of this, the reporter at The Logic, is Murad Hamadi. Welcome, Murad. Take it away. It's all yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. So the phrase supply chain has maybe never been more popular than over the last few years, when the pandemic, weather, cyber attacks, and all kinds of other things have caused backlogs and shortages in everything from consumer electronics to cars to cream cheese. That is a real example, by the way. Dominique, we're going to start with you. I bet that a lot of the products that everyone in this audience uses every day, or the parts of them, traveled on your rail network at some point. I want to start with the basics. We're here to talk about AI in transport and logistics. So tell us how CN is using AI in its rail network.
Great. Thank you, Murad. CN is using AI in a way that matters. So I think we want to avoid, the hype. We want to avoid technology that are not proven. So we do AI with a purpose. So we use AI to solve problems of the supply chain, and we align those, let's say, projects to what is the strategy of CN essentially. So if I give some example, the first one is the first use of AI we have is increasing the supply chain reliability and safety. So we have example, the locomotive that you see in the background here, the rail and the wheel interface is very important. Mm-hmm. And why is simply because a typical train of CN is having about 2.5 kilometers long, is weighing about 9,000 tons, which equate to 8-point-something million of kilograms, and it needs to stay on the rail all the time. So the inspection of the rail, we use AI for it. So we develop a technology that runs on the rail with the train and inspect those rails with all sort of sensors, collecting all sort of data, and use AI to predict degradation to that rail to be sure that we operate safely. A second example is those trains also are very long, as I mentioned. They need to be inspected at each terminal. So inspection in Canada in particular could be quite painful because sometimes it's minus 30, minus 35 in Winnipeg, and you need to walk that train and inspect them. So we developed with AI portal where the train goes through the portal as camera that have a 360 view of the locomotive and the car in the back. And with AI pattern recognition, we detect failure. And before putting the train back to service, we make sure that those are fixed. So right. We avoid disruption on our network.
And so those are two great examples. I mean, in those instances, the sort of core competency of your company is carrying this cargo. Mm-hmm. Are you, when you're looking at AI applications, are you building those in-house? Are you buying them? How do you think about building the tech stack that allows you to do these things?
Yeah, it's a combination of multiple things. First of all, we do a lot of internal development, obviously, because we know the application. So I think trying to solve a problem, you need to know what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. Second, we use partner. A lot of partner working with us to develop products to be sure that we stay up to date. It's impossible nowadays to stay up to date with what's happening in that field. So we need partner to help us, academic to help us, so that we all develop the right solution. But at the end, we orchestrate everything because it's a very knowledge-specific type of application.
Right. So on the applications that you've described, the inspections of, I guess, the locomotives and then the tracks, respectively, how much of that was coming out of your shop, and how much of that is finding parts that you can?
I will say about 50-50, and I say 50-50 as a rough number. In general, we do pretty much. It's kind of a pattern that we have, and that development has been done over a certain number of years, and it's still perfecting. I think it's something. If there's something about AI, it's need to be retrained all the time and develop all the time. So we're still investing in those technology nowadays, but and we do it with partners.
So one big theme today at this panel is going to be data. I want to talk a lot about data.
Yeah.
But you're using, I'm assuming, some computer vision in those cases, sensors, those kinds of things. What kinds of data have you used to train models that you're using in those cases or in other cases around CN?
There is obviously multiple sources of data. CN is having a rail network that cover coast to coast to coast. What I mean by that is the West Coast, from Vancouver and Prince Rupert to Halifax down to the Gulf of Mexico. So we have on that big network, we have about 100,000 or more sensors that are an important source of data, obviously. Then the portal, going through its images and thousands of images, that is also an important source of data. Then we have a system of record of all the network, performance and train on time and so on. So all those data are available for us to optimize and to look at. The particular cases of I described about the inspection methodology. It's a lot of computer vision. So we retrain, let's say, and it's difficult also to train a model on a part that is failed because it's failed, so it's no longer there. So we have some time to generate synthetically some images to train the model with various type of failure mode that could happen, so the model can learn out of it. In terms of the track, it's a bit different. It's later, it's sensors, but it's also laser technology, LiDAR. So again, it's a lot of data to accumulate and rerun in the model to train it more and more. So it's kind of a challenging task, but the results are spectacular, I have to say, because the track that we inspect now with our new technologies, first of all, we could afford now to inspect it much more often. Right. We have over 2 million miles accumulated of track inspection so far, and the quality of the rail improved by a factor of 10x, not 10%, 10x. So it's quite the result could be quite spectacular.
And so, you're a rail company. You have things that are unique about your company, as every company does, but there are other rail companies out there that probably have to inspect their tracks as well. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about integration in your own technology stack in a second, but let's talk a little bit about competitors. Like, how do you think about the benefits of AI, which could be for you, could also be for your competitors?
Yeah, definitely. It's a good question because in rail we compete and we collaborate because the rail network is it's a massive ecosystem of partner. When you look at the complete supply chain, things arrive from the port, then it pick up on the train, move a bit, then get to either a terminal and transforming mode to trucking and so on. So all those ecosystem partners need to collaborate together. So we see our rail competitors often a partner as well because we exchange between together. So predictability of our time to arrival, for example, the way we plan and manage network disruption so that we can connect with another partner on the right time at the right place. So all that is clearly a big benefit that AI can bring. So if you can do a good commodity forecasting to be sure that you have your equipment, the locomotive, your people at the right place at the right time, because your prediction about those commodity forecasting is a big plus that improves the overall supply chain.
And is that those kinds of things, forecasting, I don't know, availability on the network, rail load, shipment timings coming in, are those all areas you're already using AI, or are those things you have on your roadmap?
Yeah, some of it we have, some of it we have on the roadmap. It's going to be a never-ending story because there is tons of improvement. With the amount of data we have, you can imagine the amount of opportunity we have with AI. So it's an ongoing process. We exchange regularly with our other Class 1 railroad to share our roadmap, to share where we're going. So how could we collaborate? In some instances, we even co-develop products. So recently, we announced a Falcon, let's say, services that cover from the West Coast down to Mexico with the collaboration of UP, Union Pacific, which is a competitor normally, but a partner in that case.
Yeah.
All that data is there to facilitate those exchange and collaboration.
So, I think visibly so, CN is one of those giant Canadian companies. One of the, I can tell you, and you're not here to take customer complaints, but I've been on Via Rail trains watching CN trains go by sometimes. You're a very large company.
Yeah.
There are lots of companies in the supply chain that bring goods to you or take goods from you or, work with warehouses or whatever else that are smaller in scale. Are you sharing your data with with smaller partners in the supply chain to help with their integration?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. In fact, I mentioned about our first strategic pillar, which was operational excellence and safety and so on. Our second pillar is improving the ease of doing business with CN for not only its customer, but also its ecosystem partner. Because at the end, supply chain is all integrated. So we need to collaborate together to deliver a product. And we use partner and exchange data with them, and because that's the only way you can, in a kind of a interconnected ecosystem, survive and succeed. So yes, it is an important part.
So, clearly you're using AI in ways that improve your business. I think we'll hear this across the conference over the 2 days. AI can also be a source of competitive threat or competitive risk. And I was reading about in 2017, your CEO at the time announced $500 million over 5 years for technology. And one of the things that was cited at the time was the risk of driverless trucks taking some of this business. Now, driverless technology has not maybe advanced as quickly as we thought it would in 2017. But how do you think about the risk to your business of AI?
Yeah. Listen, there is risk, internal risk, first of all, because we need, with all amount of data and the speed at which the technology is evolving, we need to stay alert and need to be sure that we develop with very responsible AI type of principle and framework. So cybersecurity is always top of mind in all interconnected system and with data. In terms of competitive threat, it's kind of a movement you cannot stop. You just need to be ahead of the game and not behind the game. So it's moving faster, developing faster, collaborate, because to go faster you need to collaborate. It's all the better protection we have against the industry threat regarding the increase of competition. So we're working very hard to try to stay on top of the game with our partner to help us, and with that so far we succeed.
And presumably there, you were talking about obviously being aware, but also cooperating there. Yeah. Presumably some of these things could also feed into your network eventually.
Yeah, eventually, yeah, indeed, because there is multiple mode of operation. Trucking, railroad are our competitor and collaborator. It's about the same with trucking. Of course, we like to put more transport out of the road and put it on the track, obviously, because for environmental reason, it's 4 times better. It's 4 times less carbon emission when tons of goods is moved on the rail versus the trucking. But on the other end, the train don't go to your door. So you're gonna need the trucking to collaborate with you as well. So that's the type of dynamic of an interconnected ecosystem that we have to live through.
Yeah, I think last mile logistics is a thing that has come up a lot. Also,
you cannot avoid it. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the labor side of this. So the 2 examples you mentioned off the top, the rail car inspection and the track inspections, I'm sure your workers are happy not to be out in -30 in Winnipeg in the winter.
They were very grateful for us to develop that technology, yes.
But, you can see, particularly before, I think, sort of the last the last little while with generative AI systems, there was a lot of concern around automation was in those kinds of jobs, jobs that require you to be out and doing things. How are you managing that with your workforce? And I guess maybe to ask you the bluntest version of this question, do you see AI as something that decreases your total workforce, or how does it affect the workforce that you have?
We see AI as a tool to enhance our workforce, okay, to augment our workforce in a sense that, take the example of the inspection. You know, in the past, the worker has to walk the train, remember 2.5 to 4 kilometers long, you know, inspect with a flashlight at -30. Now today can do it internal with the computer screen and see those trains going by and see inspection and then walk to fix things. So you see the rescaling aspect. So people who were inspector before become fixer in the future. So you can take that example and multiply it in multiple instances because, you know, even in software development, we are experimenting now using Gen AI to help us to create code and so on. But then the work of the software engineers become a higher level, you know. Right. So the name of the game on that is rescaling. So because I never believe that AI will eventually replace human. I think it will augment humans and make the job more high level, more impactful, and increase productivity. We should not avoid it in the case that it's a remote job. I think it's going to be transforming job and increasing, you know, augmenting the capability of people and not the other way around.
Okay, and then the last thing, let me ask you just quickly. Every kid wants to grow up to be a rail engineer, I think, at some point in their life. But, you know, for AI talent, for software talent, you're competing with the biggest companies in the world, the biggest tech companies in the world. How do you find it, the ability to actually recruit those people?
Could you repeat the last piece?
How easy have you found it to find those people?
That's a very good question. It's a little bit the idea behind the image I put on the screen. I think it's important for people to understand that rail changed a lot, you know. If you look at that picture, the back of the locomotive was the whole steam locomotive that eventually transformed to a diesel locomotive that eventually is the locomotive of today, which is a connected data center on rail. Okay, so when you think about it, you know, and the fact that, as you mentioned, railroaders are very proud. It's you know, people always dream to become railroaders. They are passionate about it. So when you combine that passion for rail that people are naturally having, you combine that with, you know, the railroader or the reputation to get the things done. So it's fun to be in a company that get the things done, you know. And you combine that with technologies now, because there is more and more technology in rail. So people don't know, but CN is having a massive rail network, but also we operate a telecom network to be able to operate that rail network. So we have 8,000 miles of optical fiber. We have 3,000 towers of radio communication. Imagine the number of assets we have that are connected now with all those sensors and so on. It's a massive, massive, you know, technology work to be done. So you combine that also with the fact that moving rail and moving goods on rail is much better for the environment than any other mode of transportation. Then you attract a lot of people that are passionate about environment, about getting the things done, having an impact on society, because honestly, we touch hundreds of millions of lives every single day. Yep. You tell it at the beginning, you know, if you eat it, you wear it, or you drive it, there is a good chance we transport it in the first place. So it's an impactful, you know, for the society. It's high tech. So I think it's, and by the way, if you are interested, you can send me your resume.
All right. Well, that passion takes us very nicely to our panel, who are passionate about the things they're doing in the supply chain. I want to start by just getting a sense of what all of your organizations are doing with AI. And we have organizations that are both sort of building AI products and ones that are actually rolling it out. So I wanted to start with Louis-Olivier and Optel. Tell us a little bit about Optel and what you do.
So Optel, we're on a mission to bring visibility on what people buy. And when I say people, I'm talking about regulators, businesses, and of course, consumers. How do we do that? We leverage traceability technologies. So Optel is a company based in Quebec. We started about over 30 years ago. The first industry we helped transform is the pharmaceutical industry. Arguably the most traceable industry for all the right reasons. You want to make sure you have the right medicine in the right hands at the right moment. So we use technologies to capture data all across the supply chain to bring visibility on where a product comes from, Is it authentic? And most importantly now, and I'm going to talk more about that, what is its impact on the environment and on society in general? So having the first 15 years of our company focused on the pharmaceutical industry, which has a very strong need for traceability, we started to deploy that same technology in the mining sector and consumer goods. So today, if you're thinking about when you buy a T-shirt, where exactly does it come from? What is its water footprint? What's its carbon footprint? Is it coming out of ethical labor? All those questions we help to answer with primary data coming from the supply chain. And we're leaders in the world as we speak doing this.
All right. Brian, what kind of AI is True North building?
Thanks, Murad. We are a Montreal-based company. We've been around since 2013, and we weather route ships all over the world. At the same time, we're collecting a lot of data on these ships and calculating the performance of these ships. And the industry is changing right now, and that decarbonization is coming to the forefront. So it's added another layer of complexity to routing. And we saw an opportunity several years ago to change the way we weather route. Typically, we have captains in our office who are routing the ships based on their experience and traditional routes that have been followed for hundreds of years, depending on seasonality. We approached Ivado in 2019 with a project to design an algorithm that would look at the actual characteristics of the ship, look at all the weather data that we've collected over the last 10 years, and really design routes that have the vessel arrive just in time, rather than speeding across the ocean, arriving at a destination and sitting there for 4 or 5 days burning fuel. Assessing what the ship's capabilities are, what the weather is, and how it's changing, and adjusting speed, adjusting the route as we go along. And that piece of software was delivered late last year. It's been in production now, and what we've seen on average is savings of between 5 and 10% in fuel usage, which for these types of ships is huge. That's anywhere between 1 metric ton and 5 metric tons per day per ship.
Wow.
And so you're talking about 1,000 liters to 5,000 liters of fuel that's saved. And across a fleet of 800-900 ships, it's pretty significant.
Yeah, and those pileups you get at the ports, reducing that. And how is Shum using AI in supply chain and logistics?
Well, thank you. And I'm going to bring you on a whole new world and another world, because you were big, heavy industry, and I'm from healthcare. And I'm going to bring it to you in French, because Murad gracefully accepted I do my part in French to highlight the CHUM. Donc, je suis responsable de la stratégie institutionnelle du CHUM. Donc, vous savez, la donnée, elle est vraiment au cœur de l'intelligence artificielle. Et le CHUM est un des plus grands centres hospitaliers en Amérique du Nord. Donc, on travaille dans le renforcement de 4 piliers. Le premier pilier, c'est le talent. Donc, le talent, à travers l'école d'intelligence artificielle, on veut commencer à augmenter le niveau de littératie en données et en intelligence artificielle, parce que ça va être essentiel pour l'opérationnaliser. En ce moment, on a 106 projets en intelligence artificielle, et ce qu'on veut, c'est qu'elle passe la barrière de projet pour qu'on puisse l'utiliser au service des patients de façon plus pérenne. On travaille aussi sur une infrastructure plus résiliente et plus agile. Dans les centres hospitaliers, on a environ entre 150 et 500 systèmes d'information différents. Donc ça s'appelle des silos en même temps. Donc, à travailler pour combiner la donnée ensemble et l'exposer à un seul endroit pour l'exploiter pour l'intelligence artificielle. On travaille aussi à générer de la valeur innovante. Donc, une valeur innovante en santé, c'est oui un bénéfice sur la santé, un bénéfice sociétal, mais aussi un bénéfice économique. Dans le passé, on ne parlait pas beaucoup de l'économie en santé, mais on se rend compte de plus en plus, on se conscientise que pour qu'on soit bien soutenu par l'industrie doit avoir un bénéfice économique et avoir une belle santé économique aussi. On parle de santé, c'est la même chose en économie. Puis finalement, on travaille sur la stratégie institutionnelle de la donnée pour renforcer le volet qualité et toute la conformité aussi. Donc, au-delà de travailler de cette façon, on vient humaniser la stratégie institutionnelle de la donnée qu'on est en train de renforcer. Puis, l'humaniser devient important parce qu'on adresse des volets qui sont... On est un petit peu trop tôt pour parler parce que vous vous avez besoin de plus de café pour que je vous parle de confidentialité, que je vous parle aussi de conformité. Donc, ce qu'on veut amener avec le volet humain, c'est tout le volet adoption de l'intelligence artificielle, donc aller aussi loin que influencer et impacter au niveau des universités pour encourager d'inclure des cours universitaires en intelligence artificielle pour qu'un jour on puisse imaginer, par exemple, une infirmière experte en intelligence artificielle, des médecins experts en intelligence artificielle, puis aussi des techniciens en informatique qui sont capables d'adresser différents volets de l'intelligence artificielle pour qu'on en ait une et on ait plusieurs champs d'application qui sont utiles, utilisables et utilisés, parce que le plus important, c'est être bien soutenu puis s'assurer que l'intelligence artificielle évolue sainement.
Christian, what about IAM? I think we're going to see it.
Yeah. Just before that, I'm going to make an introducing of the project. Design in partnership with Érudit and the contribution of Scale AI, Galileo, our project, leverage the power of AI, improve port workforce dispatch planning. So I'm glad to hear what my partner are saying about data to share. So with this new tool, vessel arrival be forecast 21 days in advance rather than just 24 hours, considerably increasing performance at the Port of Montreal. Galileo use advanced algorithm to analyze port traffic, equipment availability, weather condition, the amount of type of cargo, and other factors to offer an optimal scenario of workforce dispatch. This enables terminal operator to make best decision regarding workforce needs, improving the efficiency and fluidity of the main chain. In our project, one of the key factor is video marketing our project. And yes, we will show you a 2 minutes video. So Manon, it's time to click the button.
Le nouveau projet en intelligence artificielle, c'est un projet d'intégration. Après plusieurs discussions avec le port de Montréal, on a compris qu'il y avait des projets en intelligence artificielle de deux côtés qui étaient surtout orientés sur le transport routier, les camions. Puis là, il y en a un qui est en cours pour le transport ferroviaire. Le maillon manquant, c'est la gestion du personnel. Donc, le projet Galileo, cet outil-là va nous permettre de prévoir, bien avant que le navire arrive à Montréal, la main-d'œuvre, de prévoir le coût associé autour du chargement-déchargement du navire. Et à la fin, on va valider avec les tableaux de bord, est-ce que la prédictabilité qu'on avait en amont a vraiment donné le rendement qu'on recherchait? Est-ce qu'on a créé de la valeur dans la chaîne logistique? C'est ce qu'on veut faire en bout de ligne.
L'agilité RH est devenue un thème critique pour les organisations. Les organisations devraient de plus en plus intégrer la technologie pour les aider à relever leurs défis de main-d'œuvre. Et c'est exactement ce que la plateforme d'Érudit fait. Elle vient placer la main-d'œuvre au cœur du fonctionnement de la chaîne d'approvisionnement. L'IA va permettre aux intervenants de prendre des décisions éclairées, gagnantes, grâce à une vue globale de leur réalité, laquelle est basée sur leurs données. On parle d'amélioration de la prévisibilité, de la fiabilité, tout en réduisant la charge de travail.
En fait, il y a plusieurs facteurs qui affectent le déploiement quotidien. Tout d'abord, l'arrivée et l'heure de départ des navires. Les différentes marchandises sont manipulées par les navires, c'est-à-dire soit un secteur vrac, secteur conventionnel, les conteneurs ou les navires passagers n'utilisent pas la même quantité de main-d'œuvre. Il y a les différentes règles de la convention collective aussi qui vont avoir un impact. Il y a les besoins de main-d'œuvre journaliers de la part des terminaux portuaires.
La chaîne logistique du Grand Montréal, c'est 6 300 entreprises qui collaborent sur une base quotidienne. C'est 120 000 emplois directs et indirects qui vont vraiment travailler ensemble pour bouger la marchandise. Donc, un retard va être très significatif.
Lorsque le navire va quitter son port de départ pour le port de destination, un navire qui transporte, exemple, 3 500 boîtes, avant même d'arriver à Montréal, on va être capable d'estimer les ressources requises pour manipuler les boîtes au meilleur moment, au meilleur coût, bien entendu, et à la limite même d'influencer l'accélération ou le ralentissement du navire pour qu'il arrive à une meilleure plage, qu'on puisse offrir un service impeccable. Mais ce phénomène-là, c'est tout un changement dans la chaîne logistique parce qu'aujourd'hui, on a beaucoup de difficultés à prévoir, même à la demi-journée, le moment où le navire va arriver à quai. Donc, ça a des impacts. Ça a des impacts sur nos employés, ça a des impacts sur des opérateurs, ça a des impacts sur des terminaux.
La façon que le système a été bâti, c'est avec une structure modulaire qui nous permet de facilement s'adapter à la réalité opérationnelle du client. Donc, par exemple, on peut venir intégrer de nouvelles sources de données, puis on va venir tout simplement réentraîner les modèles pour desservir la problématique visée.
Donc, le projet Galileo va modifier le déploiement en l'accélérant. Le déploiement se fera de façon beaucoup plus rapide. On parle ici de couper environ 30 du temps qui est alloué au déploiement de la main-d'œuvre. Une autre conséquence, c'est qu'on va avoir des données concrètes, en plus de notre expertise, auxquelles on va pouvoir se référer pour prendre des décisions éclairées.
Ce que nous, on fait actuellement pour la gestion du personnel, c'est aussi de l'innovation pure. Et grâce à la contribution de Scale AI, grâce avec la contribution des membres de l'Association des employeurs maritimes, on fait un investissement qui est quand même significatif, qui va avoir un impact non seulement sur la chaîne logistique de Montréal, mais sur l'ensemble des intervenants qui sont impactés par la chaîne logistique de Montréal.
L'outil, à court terme, va aussi amener les entreprises à comprendre que l'utilisation des données de l'intelligence artificielle est positive pour notre secteur. Donc, ils vont inciter les plus petites, moyennes entreprises aussi à cumuler les données, à utiliser des outils d'intelligence artificielle et travailler en collaboration avec des startups, avec des incubateurs, avec des associations aussi, pour justement mieux performer et être mieux positionnés au niveau de la chaîne logistique mondiale.
All right. We're joking about video marketing. I wanted to start by talking about sort of the technology stack a little bit here. So lots of vendors, more every day, are offering AI solutions. And you've all talked about actual impacts that you're seeing, but I can tell you I get pitched a lot of things in my inbox that like the word vaporware comes to mind. I wanted to start with you, Anne. How does Shum decide when to build, buy, or partner, and kind of what is legitimate out there?
Pour le volet Build by Partner, c'est sûr qu'on a des décisions vraiment cruciaux à prendre. Dans un hôpital, il y a toujours quelque chose de plus prioritaire et quelque chose de plus impactant qu'on pense sur le bien-être du patient. Donc, tout le volet investissement, on doit vraiment bien le penser à long terme avec une bonne stratégie. Donc, on doit évaluer l'expertise interne parce que quand même, lorsque l'expertise elle est disponible, est-ce qu'on veut la dédier à augmenté par l'intelligence artificielle, par le développement. Donc, on veut utiliser ces différents coûts-là pour balancer la valeur ajoutée qu'on a aux patients. Donc, très souvent, des programmes comme Scale AI nous permettent de dérisquer ce type d'investissement, aller chercher de l'expertise externe, l'exposer aux gens internes aussi pour pouvoir se donner un élan. On veut aussi choisir des fournisseurs qui comprennent bien le volet santé. T'sais, on veut des fournisseurs qui sont empathiques à la cause, authentiques aussi sur l'impact qu'ils veulent avoir et vraiment logiques puisque les échéanciers sont souvent plus serrés. Donc, dans cette optique-là, on cherche toujours des partenaires. On dit la santé, c'est une vocation, mais c'est vrai. Donc, on veut des fournisseurs que les yeux brillent lorsqu'on parle de la santé.
Yeah, speaking of the sort of de-risking part of this, I mean, we were talking about this a little with Dominic, but Brian, organizations have, historically been reluctant to share information for competitive reasons, possibly regulatory reasons, depending on what they're moving. But AI needs a large amount of data to work, and you're, working with different companies how are you convincing clients that it's good for them to share data that can benefit other shipping companies?
Yeah, that's definitely probably the biggest challenge we have right now is that, especially the industry we're in within shipping, it's a very secretive industry. There's a dynamic between a ship owner and an operator, people who charter these ships. And the owners are essentially marketing their ships. And when they do, they're saying their ships can do a certain speed, burn a certain amount of fuel per day. oftentimes that's not true. And the type of work we're doing is actually putting data to that and showing that these aren't true. So what we've seen is, over the last few years, two categories of owners and operators: the ones who are at the forefront, who have very well-managed fleets, who have very young fleets, who are perfectly okay with sharing this data because they really have nothing to hide, and then operators wanting to collaborate with these companies. I think also, too, with a lot of in our industry, a lot of the regulations that are coming into place, it's forcing companies to be more transparent, which is a good thing. And it'll get there, but it's going to take time. But what we also see, too, that's very interesting, is that there's platforms developing where I could be doing the weather routing for a ship. There could be another company that's not a competitor of mine, but they could be a fuel supplier. And we have a common client. And if we share certain data, if they're feeding me information about the changing prices of fuel, I can put that into my optimization software. So we're taking that into account. And our end user is really benefiting from that. So I think we're really moving towards that, but it will take some time, but we're going there.
Yeah, and I mean, in that vein, you know, on the sort of integration of the actual technology stack, I mean, presumably these applications work better if they're feeding into each other, talking to each other. I wanted to ask you about this, Olivier. How are you designing solutions that are sort of interoperable, or at least convincing clients that there's benefits to that?
Well, one of the biggest challenges we're addressing right now is help to accelerate decarbonization of supply chains. As we know, supply chains account for about 60% of global GHG emissions. And what we see coming now, starting from Europe and coming here to America, North America, it's what I call supply chain transparency regulations. And what does that mean in a nutshell is that companies have to start sharing data, and I really like the points that we discussed today, because this is so important that people understand that the new competitive advantage and the next, probably now in the next 5 years, is the ability to share verifiable information about a product. Not only the actual company that produced that product, the brand, but I'm talking about the network of suppliers behind that brand, behind that product, that can share information in a standardized way so that the consumers, the regulators, and businesses understand what they're actually buying. So this can touch deforestation, ethical labor, like I talked about, but most importantly, carbon footprint. And what we see coming right now is regulation about Scope 3 emissions. So it's the impact of the entire supply chain. And as we know, that's where most of the emissions come from for most of companies. So that means that people need to start sharing verifiable data on their emissions at scale. And we are here to provide that. And there's two ways to do this. The first one is a great first step, is to use secondary data. So you go out there, you use estimates, you go on Google, and then I'm about there, and that's good. But what regulators are going to start to require right now, and it's already happening in Europe, and it's coming here, it's using primary data. So that means that I'm sharing information with my other supplier who's selling to that other supplier, and we need to have that chain of data coming all over to the final product. And we've proven that at scale with a public case with Coca-Cola, where we shared data from farms in South America producing coffee in that specific case, all the way to the final product sold in Japan. It's probably one of the coolest things we're working on right now. We call that dynamic carbon footprint. And what that means is that each lot of that final product that's coming out has a specific carbon footprint, not based on estimates, based on the actual data, traceability data from the supply chain. So to come back to your question, it's fundamental that people share information. Mm-hmm. And I see people that have no choice to share information because regulators are coming in, and others that are doing it because they understand that this is the new competitive advantage.
I want to come to the labor piece in a second, but just staying here for a sec. We're talking about regulation that's on the sort of emission side that's forcing these outcomes. But I'm wondering whether either of you see a place for standardization around the, technical standardization around the way data is shared or the way platforms need to integrate, because obviously, some companies, I imagine CN's been keeping records in a certain way for years, but you need the data to come in a certain way to be able to ingest it.
Yeah, as an example, just to complement with Olivier, it's we put in our website now a carbon emission calculator with an API. so that company like you can take the data, process it, and provide the service to you. So it's when we say it's an interconnected ecosystem, it is, and it's important.
It's so important, and that's an excellent example of how companies need to collaborate. We've seen, we were talking a couple of years ago, a lot of data is in silos. People are starting their own systems, and that's great, but the key word that you said is interoperability, the ability to collect that data and standardize it. This is where the challenge is. And we talked a bit about confidentiality and all this. I've never been one to say that everybody's putting their data on the table and it's all transparent. It's about sharing in a confidential way sometimes, but being able to share verifiable data. And I underline here verifiable, because if it's only self-declared, it's worth what it's worth, right? But I think in terms of standardization, we are getting there. If you think about organizations like GS1 and new standards and the traceability and the supply chain are helping a lot. And this is definitely taking shape in the next 2-3 years, due to those regulations mostly.
Yeah, I think on our side, we do see regulations sort of standardizing things. The UN has a body called the IMO, which is the International Maritime Organization, which has put into effect laws actually coming into place in 2024 called the CII Index, which is the Carbon Intensity Index. And all vessels are going to be graded A to F. And it's a standardized way of reporting the emissions of your ships, and you can't really skate around it, and the data is transparent. So it's coming. We see it.
Okay, I want to turn to the other side of the coin on AI for our last few minutes on the panel here. Starting on the labor side with you, Christian. So you're working on behalf of employers. You have a lot of people on those docks. We've seen some in some cases in recent times. Labor actions or labor negotiations have involved questions of automation. How are your members and the employers sort of dealing with that question with workers, explaining to them how this will affect them?
It's really important to explain what we're trying to do. We're not trying to replace people. We try to help people to take better decisions. So for us, it was really important, like I mentioned at the beginning, marketing is really important. So we did market our project. We did have discussion with them. So they have to be involved in what you're doing. So it's really important.
Right. And are you seeing those issues cropping up more recently? Like, is that more of an active conversation than it has been in the past?
AI is really on the front of every page. So yes, at this moment, people ask a lot of questions regarding AI. And I think before a couple of years ago, AI was placed in a position that it was like replacing something. But for me, it's really to help us to do better decisions, to do better things. And you know what? At the end, it's going to help everybody.
I want to talk a little bit about the externalities here. So humans aren't perfect, and nor are algorithms. All of you do things that the consequences of which are very significant. I wanted to start with Anne, because healthcare, the lives of people, is perhaps the most important thing. How are you thinking about sort of using AI, given that some of this stuff is still in development, like the sort of the downside risk of error or bias, those kinds of things?
Ce qui est intéressant de la question puis des interventions, c'est que je me rends compte que même si on est des industries différentes, on a exactement les mêmes critères sur le partage, la collaboration, la confidentialité des données. Et le grand bout, c'est vraiment la standardisation. Donc, lorsque, oui, on développe des modèles, c'est vraiment super important si au bout de ça, on pense qu'il y a un patient. Donc, l'impact est grand. Ce qu'on essaie de faire, c'est des preuves de concept par jalon, atteindre une qualité de données, retester dans une plus grande population et vraiment la standardisation fait la plus grande différence. Surtout que lorsqu'on standardise, on est capable d'atteindre par la suite un niveau 80-20. Donc, on standardise à 80 et le 20 permet d'atteindre par la suite la précision recherchée. En santé, on vise la médecine de précision. Donc, le volet standardisation et personnalisation devient crucial pour avoir des champs d'application vraiment utiles pour le patient. L'autre volet, par contre, que je voulais intégrer avec les collègues ici, c'est le volet compétitivité. En santé, on ne pense pas que c'est important d'être compétitif. Pourtant, l'IA et le volet développement durable vient faire la différence. En ce moment, on applique l'intelligence artificielle, notamment pour les variations de coûts. Au niveau des salaires, c'est la plus grande variation des coûts qu'on a en santé, mais la deuxième, c'est tous les dispositifs jetables. Donc, on réussit, grâce à l'intelligence artificielle, de moduler le flux de travail et de conscientiser sur la différence des coûts tout au long d'un processus, par exemple, chirurgical. Donc, lorsqu'on parle de bateau, de train, c'est un peu la même chose en santé aussi. On amène un patient d'un plan B à un plan B en passant par différents jalons. Puis ça aussi, c'est important que la donnée suive de façon bien confidentielle et bien encapsulée.
Brian, in a similar vein, obviously you will tell us that the technology you build, it works. Obviously, you've got customers, you're rolling it out. But are there parts of the supply chain where you're a little more skeptical about the use of AI, or at least where more work is needed, you think, to get things going?
Yeah, I think, we see limitations in the AI that we've developed in that it is all based on building a sort of digital twin or a digital sister of that ship. Obviously, if there's something wrong with the ship, if there's an engine problem, if there's hull fouling, those models go out the window, and our AI is pretty much useless at that point. And that's why we have to go back to what I call our legacy services, where we weather route the old-fashioned way with the captains. So there's still challenges to climb, still things to face, but what we do see is a lot of promise. And the next stage for us really is pattern recognition, reinforced learning, to find those anomalies right away, spot them, identify them, and talk to our clients about them so they can take action.
And this is perhaps the advantage of having a company that was doing this before the AI part of it, so you have that experience.
We were really fortunate, too, that we had piles of data to work with beforehand, so that really helped us a lot.
All right. Well, in the interest of keeping us on track, which it has been emphasized to me that we should do. It is a good, respectful thing for all of us to do. I want to turn to a startup that's actively working in this space. So Huang is here to tell us about Melly. Over to you.
All right. Thank you, Murad. So my name is Juan, CTO and co-founder of Melly.ai. And I want to share with you a little bit of our story, how we help the logistics and the transport domain with AI. So I remember, as a 20-year-old student at McGill University, I used to work in the transport and logistics industry as a data entry clerk. I would look at these invoices that would come in different shapes and size, and the bill of lading also, and then keying them into a transport management system, 40 hours a week, 3 months over the summer. So you can pretty imagine how this is the world's most exciting job ever. And I thought to myself, hey, there must be a better way to do this back into year 2000. Fast forward today, 2023, with the logistics domain still has that same problem where people are keying data manually every day. But we've done milestones and big leaps in terms of technology thanks to AI. So how big is this problem? If we take the typical Canadian freight forwarder, which has about 15 full-time employees keying data, we're talking about $1 million problem that we're able to solve with a solution using AI. So what we bring to the table at Melly.ai is that we bring an intelligent document processing technology, a platform that's able to extract data from paper documents quickly and accurately. And also, of course, it will replace my 20-year-old me by sending those data directly into the TMSs. We enable intelligent process automation and data-driven business intelligence thanks to this data. So here's a little glimpse of what our platform looks like with the PDF on the left side and the extraction of what our platform extracted on the right side for easy auditing. So our mission at Meli.ai is that we want to be able to leverage the latest innovations in AI to be able to serve the transport and logistics domain so that we remove all kinds of manual, low-value work, and we want to be able to make the 20-year-old me more happy at its work. So, a few of our customers' success stories. So we are working with the Port of Montreal at the moment, and what their use case is that they receive hazmat documents or declarations of hazardous materials in their containers. And we, instead of leaving them in emails, filers, they send it into our platform so we can extract the data, and we are able to index it so that it's rapidly searchable and findable. Why is this so important, you might ask? It's because if an accident should happen at the port, well, they want to be able to respond to that accident using the information from these documents in seconds, not in hours. And that's the difference that we make at the Port of Montreal. We're able to find documents instantaneously because we extract the data and we index everything. Another product that we are currently developing is Auto Customs, and this is a game-changer product for the customs brokers. Why? Because we are offering two main features, which are the HS code predictions and the recommended actions for the exception management. So take the job of the rater, whose job is to assign the right HS code for every item that comes into Canada, and that HS code translates to a tariff when you import goods into Canada. That job is currently done manually, where a person has to analyze every line of the invoice, the commercial invoice. And what our platform is doing is that instead of the rater looking at every line, assigning a HS code for every item that comes into Canada, our platform is able to analyze all of the past data, bring it to life so that we're able to provide recommendations on those HS codes so that we are a rater's best friend so that that person doesn't need to use always go back into the archives, see what the exceptions were, the business rule were for that particular object, and we are really assisting that rater's job. If there's any exceptions, such as a change of information, change of field, well, we learn from those actions, and we provide a recommended action just in case that exception happens again. So thank you very much. My name is Juan, and if you are interested in seeing more, we have a booth here at the Meli.ai booth in the Startup Zone. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, and to wrap us up here, we're going to hear from someone who's working on figuring out what comes next for AI in logistics and supply chains. Emma, I'll leave it to you to. I'm really sorry, I'm going to do this. Take this train home.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Merci. Alors, vous allez avoir le plaisir moi, j'ai le plaisir d'être avec vous pour les dernières 10 minutes à peu près. Puis, j'ai été demandé de faire des perspectives de recherche sur ce qu'on a parlé dans le panel. So, I'm going to talk about solving real-world decision-making problems. So, problems that are high value that we've been discussing in the panel that maybe you have with your organization. And let's first start to think about what is these decision-making problems, okay? So we heard several examples. It can be we're using sensors and we want to do better inspection, right? So we're actually using some machine learning to predict whether we have maintenance requirements, and then we want to schedule that maintenance. We need to send out people to do those. We have workforce planning issues. Maybe we want to have routing problems, right? But these are subject to uncertainty, such as, weather, as you were mentioning earlier. Okay, so I would like to start with inviting you to think about a high-value problem in your organization. Okay, it can be procurement, inventory management, routing, fleet management. Okay, something that has to do with decision-making problems. Now, as you think about it, most likely there is something that you don't know perfectly about this problem, right? So you need some sort of prediction. And when we're talking about transportation, logistics, and supply chain, many times we talk about demand as one of the key uncertain components, but it can be something else. It can be costs, it can be, equipment failure, and so forth. Okay, so keep that in your mind, and now I'm going to say a bit about what can the state of the art, where is research right now, and what can it do to solve those high-value problems? And in order to do so, we need to understand what we're really good at today. Okay, so right now, we're really good at a lot of things, thanks to data, not necessarily, massive amount of data, but high-quality data. We also have high-performing algorithms and massive computing power. Okay, so these are success factors for machine learning. That is widely known why machine learning is so powerful. What I would like to just take a little bit of time is to explain that we're also really good at these very hard optimization problems that I was mentioning. I think Dominique earlier was saying, imagine Cienne. You need to manage so many assets. There are thousands of locomotives, right? You're running thousands of trains per week. So the sheer scale of these problems are hard. And I'm pretty sure that the problems that you are thinking about right now that are valuable to your organization, they're also large scale. They are hard to solve. Well, luckily, we're really good at solving those problems right now, okay? So we've seen over the past decades, speed-ups just in terms of algorithms, 265,000 times, okay? Now you add the compute power to that, and then you get billions of speed-up, right? So problems that would have taken years to solve a couple of decades ago, now we're solving them in less than a second. So that has a lot of potential. And actually, they're routinely used. Scheduling problems, routing problems are routinely used today. You go and buy an airline ticket, you're going to get prices that you see that are generated by algorithms solving these. Okay, so let's look at that pipeline. What are we good at today, and how do we do it? Okay, so most of the times we'll think about, I don't know demand. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to take the best performing machine learning algorithms and I'm going to predict demand, okay? Then I'm going to feed those predictions, so a number for everything that I don't know, to an optimization algorithm that is going to produce a solution. Now, as we have heard from several people, we're not in the game to replace people necessarily. We want to augment them. We want to make their decision-making better, right? So human will look at these and maybe make some adaptations and then implement those solutions, in which case you see what actually happens, right? And so you're going to see what was the demand that I didn't know and so forth. Okay, so we go from forecast to optimization solution to execution. We generate more data, and here we go. Now, the key issue here is that when we're using those predictions, what we're really good at is assuming that those predictions are perfect. Okay, now this may not be true. And I love this picture, and I stole it from a colleague who posted it on LinkedIn. But let's say that I want to, produce a mattress as the lowest cost, and I do a point prediction on how you're going to sleep. I can do some pretty good job as long as you don't move around. Okay, so we're really good at solving problems, but we're not very good at solving problems when they are subject to uncertainty. So if we are really good at making predictions, then we have really good solutions. Now, we want those solutions to be robust, which is not always the case, in particular if there is some degree of uncertainty around those predictions. And to be completely honest, I think all of us who have been working with machine learning algorithms, we know they're never that perfect, right? There is always some degree of uncertainty around those predictions. And here is where what we're doing today in research come into place. So what we want to change perspective, what we want to do is to focus on the outcome. We don't want to implement a solution and then say, oh, we're disappointed. It didn't actually go as the way we wanted it to go, right? So that means that something becomes crucial is uncertainty characterization. I'm not only focusing on getting the best possible predictions, I actually want to characterize also the uncertainty around those predictions. And not only do I want to do that, I also want to optimize and take that uncertainty into account when I'm optimizing. Now, the real issue and why we as researchers still have a job is because that's really hard, okay? Those problems become very hard to solve. So if we go back to this pipeline that I showed earlier, now it looks really similar, but I would like to start with a question. So, either if you're a stakeholder or if you're a developer and you're working on the prediction side, I bet you probably sometime have been in the situation where you're looking at some average error measures and you're saying like, is this good enough? I have like on average a 10% error, or I have on average like 2%, 15%. What's good? What's good enough, right? And then I'm comparing to some baseline model. And it's like, okay, so it's a lot better than the baseline, but what's the best I can do, okay? So here, what we're trying to do in research is that we're flipping things, okay? Look at this picture, not the left to the right, but the right to the left. Okay? What really matters, and the question you should ask yourself, is not whether my accuracy is good enough, is whether the information my prediction algorithms are producing for the decision-making problem I want to solve, is that information valuable, right? So what we want to do is to train our algorithms not to be very accurate in prediction, but to result in the best possible outcomes for my decision-making problem. So this is how we want to solve the issue of sort of the disappointment when you have implemented a solution that was overly optimistic, right? Think about the mattress. We don't want that mattress, okay? So the end game here is to link better the optimization and the prediction. This is why these are now fused together. These are not siloed. We don't do first prediction and then optimization. We do them together. And we're doing that acknowledging that we have uncertainty, okay? Now, what we want to give the human decision makers who are in the loop, we want to give them solutions that are interpretable. And this is actually even harder when we need to deal about uncertainty. Try asking people about thinking in probabilities. People are usually really bad to have an idea of what is this probability as opposed to the other. So uncertainty is tough also just to digest as a human. So we want good interpretable solutions, and we want to make sure that we're taking into account the risk perception of those humans and the organizations that are in the loop. And all of this is done so that we will actually get, you know, the outcome that we really anticipated when we act in the real world. So this is ongoing research, and it's funded by Ivado, and I'm doing this with co-PIs, Eric Delage and Yusiria de Leasec, and I also have research program funded by CN, which I would like to acknowledge. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, please give our entire panel a round of applause. Thank you all so much for joining me up here today, and enjoy the rest of your show, people. Thank you for coming.
Well done.